This is the Wonderfully Made podcast, and I'm your host, Fifi Buchanan. On this show, I share personal experiences, narrate stories I've written to reveal truths about life and the human experience. I also share lifestyle improvement tips in bite-sized episodes, so you can listen during your commute, in the office, or in the comfort of your own home. My desire is that every time you listen, you are reminded that you are wonderfully made. Hey everyone, so I will be talking about how to choose the right therapist, but before I get into the episode, a special thanks to everyone who listened and shared the episode last week, as well as everyone who bought and downloaded my book, Foods Your Body Loves. I really appreciate you and I'm so glad you're here. So let's get into the episode. I received a question recently about finding a therapist, and it's taken me a little time, but I want to share some of the things to consider. First of all, to the person who sent this question in and anyone considering therapy, I commend you for reflecting on where you are in life and deciding that working with a mental health professional could help you with a healthier mindset or a better coping mechanism, and also just provide you with a neutral environment for you to share the details of your life and get insight. Sometimes you get lucky and the first person you meet is a good fit, but more often than not, you may need to try a few therapists before you find that really good fit for where you are in your life currently. My first experience with therapy was a great one. And then the most challenging time finding a therapist for me was when we all seemed to need it at the same time, and that was in 2020 during the pandemic. There were extremely long wait lists at all the offices I contacted, and then even once booked, there was really not enough room in the schedule for weekly appointments, which was what I was looking for. I found over the years there have been times when I needed to be actively working with a therapist, and then other times when I didn't work with one, but I was able to lean on the things I learned in therapy to help me with everyday life. I think the first thing to consider is, what do you want to achieve by going to therapy? A good therapist will ask you this, so it's good to really consider this answer ahead of time. Do you have a recent life event that you need help navigating, a major change, a shift in your health, turmoil within your family unit, or maybe something from your past that you're just ready to work through? Quite honestly, the answer could be a combination of these, but it's still good to prioritize. What do you want to tackle first? My first experience with therapy was after being diagnosed with ADHD. I wanted someone to help me navigate and help me to find tools that would help me with symptoms of ADHD, such as anxiety. So when the therapist asked what my goal was for therapy at that time, I said to learn more about ADHD and find out if it was possible to manage ADHD without medication. Next, consider the type of therapy you believe would be a good fit for you. There are many types, and I think it's best for you to do your own research. At one counseling center, I was given an intake form, and they wanted to know if I wanted a therapist that was more religious-based or had a specialty in things like LGBTQIA, or someone who specialized with working with people who are neurodivergent. There is also cognitive behavioral therapy. There's also eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Usually that's called EMDR. There's also mindfulness focused therapy, which I've done, and that's really worked really well for me. There's honestly so many different types, but I'd recommend you do your research, find out what's best for you, and then see what's accessible in your area. Something else to consider is whether you're in a position to pay out of pocket directly for therapy, or you need to use your insurance, or if you currently don't have very much of a budget or are not working, do you need to find a place that has adjustable fees, like basically a sliding scale at which they will charge you for? What I will say is, if you are working with a therapist through your insurance, I believe most insurance companies require your therapist to diagnose you after your first appointment, or at least before treating you. So what this means is that your first session, it may carry into two, but they'll spend that time assessing you and your situation and your needs. Once that's determined, they will submit that to your insurance and they'll move forward with an action plan. Now, why I don't like this is that it kind of puts the therapist in this position where they have to try to pull everything out of you from your history, whether it's like all the way back to your childhood or whenever a traumatic event began, and then kind of what led you to where you are today. And that can be a lot. And they have to gather this information because this is how they make the assessment. This also means if you need to switch therapists after 1 or 2 sessions, you have to go through this process all over again. When paying out of pocket, it's a bit different. They will need to assess you, but they may not have that pressure of having to assess and diagnose after 1 to 2 sessions. So it's just kind of something we have to deal with here in the US. I know that I have listeners all over the world, but those of us in the US kind of have to deal with that if we go through our insurance to get help with paying for therapy. It can be a bit intense, but that's how the system is set up. Now, some therapists do not take insurance, and I know with many of us having like a high deductible insurance plan, it also means that the full amount of therapy may be charged to you if your deductible hasn't been met yet. So these are just things to consider as far as like when you're choosing where to go. It's like, how will you be billed? There's also a lot of free resources for therapy becoming available, and I've noticed that even some companies will offer that to employees directly. Now, I will also say this. It can take time to find the right person, and if you're ever in a situation where you really need help right away and you're just not sure who to call, if things have gotten pretty tough, you can actually call the suicide hotline, which is 988 in the US, or text them, and a trained professional will respond to you. They will talk to you, and they can also provide you with some low cost or free mental health resources. No one should have to suffer alone. Okay, so the next thing to consider is, are you ready to do the work? Therapy can unearth some heavy things and even shed light on areas that, you may find that you need to be more accountable. If you are not ready to do the work, it will not be a good use of your time or money. It's like starting a fitness routine. There are things you need to commit to in order for the system to work. So just keep that in mind. Next, I would say it will also be good to consider how frequently you'd like to go to therapy and whether or not you want to do in-person, phone, or video. Over the years, in-person therapy has been really great for me. It gives me a chance to be completely immersed into the session and present in that moment. But video became a good option when the pandemic started. It ensured I would never be late to an appointment, which I loved, but sometimes I found it hard to find a quiet and private space in my home. Now, others, they like phone a little better. That's what they're comfortable with. And I understand if you happen to be a caregiver of any kind, going to an in-person appointment might be difficult, especially if you have small children. So just consider what would work best for you and make sure you check if the offices you're calling can offer the option that works best for you and your lifestyle. Last, just be prepared to give yourself a lot of grace. Some days therapy can feel more intense than others, and one day you may just want to go home and take a nap. Some days you might need to go out in nature or get your journal and just take a little more time to reflect. There might be moments you don't like what you hear. You might not like the icky feelings that come up from talking about the things that are on your mind and heart. While therapy is uncomfortable at times, never should you be made to feel unsafe, disrespected, coerced in any way. Your relationship with your therapist should start out professionally and remain that way. If they are not a good fit, do not go back. I would even say, don't even finish the session if there's ever a time that you're not feeling safe. If you go to therapy for a while and then at some point later in the future, it no longer serves you, you're free to change therapists or take a break from therapy. Just put yourself first, always. So that's pretty much what I have to share. Just take some time to reflect on the tips that I shared. And I hope that if you are starting the journey to finding a therapist, that it really goes well for you and serves you and meets the needs that you have. So I hope these could kind of help to begin that journey or encourage you to make that step of making the appointment. And if you know someone who is thinking about therapy or you think should be, share this episode with them. That's it for now. Thanks for listening.